Convening the regular meeting of the City Commission of January 16, 2014. The roll call, please.
Commissioner Mumm?
Here.
Commissioner Roth?
Here.
Commissioner Pauley?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Mayor Neely?
Here. Thank you very much. Will you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I think this is the third time since I've been mayor. I'm going to take it with me. The third time since I've been mayor, I've had the honor of giving out something we rarely give out, and that's the key to the city. We're usually for extraordinary things, and we had an extraordinary thing, and I'll explain it before I call somebody forward. Several months ago, our city manager announced that one of the members of the staff, a member of our police department, Cynthia Gates, was in need of a kidney. And a member of our community stepped up, a living member of our community stepped up and donated a kidney to her. And we would like, on this occasion, to present her with a key to the city. And is it Camilla? Do I have that right?
I go by Campy.
Campy? Okay.
Camilla.
Camilla. Okay. Camilla Stowe, if you want to come forward. Thank you. This is the key to the city. It's presented to you for your tremendous, I'll call it sacrifice, because most people don't do things like that. For providing the kidney to Cynthia Gates, police officer Cynthia Gates. Thank you so much for that tremendous and selfless gift that you gave to Cynthia, but you also gave to an important member of our community and our staff. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if you want to say something, but I know Cynthia does, so I'll pass the microphone to her, and then if you want to say a few words, you're welcome to.
So, just a little history on what brought us here. I was diagnosed with kidney disease about 20 years ago. My kidneys eventually failed. My father gave me a kidney in 2003, and that one started to fail about 2 years ago. So I started on dialysis, and I got listed on a deceased donor list and was able to start testing people for prospective living donors. So took about 8 months, but we exhausted our list of family members and friends and coworkers, and two of my daughters decided to take the matter into their hands and get creative. One went to the media, the other one went to her middle school principal with a flyer that she made, and that principal emailed that off to all the parents. And fortunately, Cammie has a daughter at the same middle school and read that email in the flyer and had every reason to not be involved. She's got a big active family. They all are in sports and music and drama, and she's a doctor. And to top it off, she gave a portion of her liver to someone she didn't know 6 years ago. So she could have easily said, this isn't for me, but instead she put her name on the list, and when I first met her, she said, when I put my name on the list, I knew I was going to be the match. So, and part of why we're here is that her family completely supported her, even though they were scared and didn't quite understand probably why she was doing it. And if they hadn't, I'm sure this wouldn't have happened. So she's just an amazing person. So she went through a lot of testing, a lot of inconvenience, and lost time at work. And our daughters were talking at school one day about the upcoming surgery when we had it scheduled for April 8th, and it was getting close. And my daughter asked her daughter, is your mom scared? And she said, no, she's excited. My mom wants to make the world a better place. And she definitely may not be able to change the entire world as a whole, but she's completely changed my world. And to say for the better would be an understatement. So. I do want to thank my family for their support, and friends and church members, all who came around and helped us out in a variety of ways. But I mean, Cynthia is right when she said that when I read the email, I just knew it was going to be a match. And for me, it was a God thing. So I have to give God the glory here too. So if it hadn't been for him nudging me, this probably would not have occurred either. So I want to make sure we put the honor back to where it belongs. So thank you.
I'm going to request, if you don't mind, if the family members would actually stand up from both families, and because it's very clear that all of you were involved. And stand up here, please. Thank you very much for your selflessness and your commitment to your brother and your commitment to your family. Thank you so much. Thank you. With that, one of our county commissioners has a report to make to us about good things, I hope.
I hope so.
Martha Schrader, thank you for coming.
I'm really going to try.
You're gonna try, and you're gonna be successful.
Thank you, you're sweet. Although that was a tough act to follow, and I
It is.
congratulate both families, and how wonderful that someone is so selfless to do that. And congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. So I'm Commissioner Martha Schrader, and one of the reasons I'm here tonight is, as many of you know, we have areas of outreach, and I am lucky enough to have Oregon City as my
Woohoo.
area, woohoo, for the next few months here. And so as part of that, I usually try and attempt to come to the commission meetings, and I want to say hi to Mr. Sullivan, who taught me everything I know about land use, by the way. Here's my last. And David, it's nice to see you here tonight. And Tony and I have worked together. I hope at least we show up at the same meetings with the with the Heritage site. Basically, I just wanted a few talking points to let you know what's going on at the county at this point, and an update on some of our issues. We passed our budget last night. The overall budget was essentially $825 million, and that includes, of course, our special districts, dedicated state and federal funds and grants, and the funding for Clackamas County in the budget, excluding the special districts, approximately it was about $605 million. This is the first time in a long time we have seen an uptick. The budget is balanced. It is sustainable. For the first time that we can remember, we actually hit the thresholds that we need for our reserves and our contingency funds, which was part of our goals. We're working on a major strategic planning process with measurable outcomes at this point with a consultant. We had a retreat as a group of commissioners, outlining what those were. And as you can imagine, it's basically a lot of things that you're also interested in. We invested in our public health care clinics and the operation of our federally qualified health care clinics. That is still a necessity in this county. We also continue to work with the free clinic that our good friend Dr. Norris and some of his colleagues are working on in terms of helping them make sure that they have malpractice insurance so they can continue to operate. We had additional funding for sheriff's patrols. We did add funding for a new workforce program for our veterans. We added additional funding for treatment of juveniles suffering from mental illness as long as we did that. We also added additional dollars for juvenile beds. That's a big thing. And we actually did something quite unusual where we really decided if we were ever going to go out for maintenance funding and ask our citizens, which includes you folks, for additional dollars, that we would also put our money where our mouth was, and we infused a $500,000 infusion into our county's road maintenance fund, and that will be used to pay for critical road maintenance needs. And we are at crisis in the county. It's hard to get that across to people because people don't know a county road from a city road from a state road. And in general, you know, if they think it's all pretty okay, well, then they really don't know, you know, where they're driving. It's usually the potholes, particularly in the rural areas, that we're really trying to do some upkeep on. The strategic plan, you know, I think our values are largely to build a significant good infrastructure, a vibrant economy, ensure healthy and safe and secure communities, honor, utilize, and promote good investment in our natural resources. And this is the most important one, in my opinion, and I will be quite honest with all of you tonight because I know many of you as friends and colleagues for years that trying to continue to build public trust through good government. I know we've had our rocky periods, but I'm fully expect us to get through that, and that we will continue to cooperate and be good and solid partners with one another. One of the things I wanted to mention, the county and Oregon City, you've agreed on at least a temporary, and we hope a permanent basis to our parking issues near 11th and Main. And the county staff has been working to take up valuable street parking. And what we've reached is the solution of our purchase of a parking lot at 1102 Main Street. We purchased the property in October, and we have plans to renovate the site and design work, and that should begin this fall, the design work, and then construction in the spring. So thank you for that. That was a huge help because we had issues with our community corrections folks not having additional parking. I guess the one thing I'd really like to concentrate on is I think an issue, and I was at a meeting today actually with Metro and our economic development folks and your economic development director concerning the Willamette Falls Legacy project. We're working to really try and push forward with the new owner to nail down an easement for the Riverwalk. We think that's an essential piece of this. We've already contributed $100,000 towards the project. We'd like to contribute at least $500,000 more. But the issue that we're dealing with at the regional level is that, as I reread the memorandum of understanding that we had signed with Metro and Oregon City and folks, and in particular the budget note that was put forward at the level of the state legislature for the $5 million, we're starting to abut against deadlines. That I made a point of mentioning that to the developer and to those who want a public-private partnership. In the legislative budget note, essentially, the match for $5 million needs to be in place by March 15th of 2015. So if you don't have copies of that, I want to make sure everybody gets copies of that, because this is a time frame where everybody, I think we can find the match. That isn't what concerns me as much, but I'm getting the sense from the Regional Solutions folks that they want to see deadlines met with the easement as well as the appropriate development plan that's going to happen, so we know what's going to go where and what kind of infrastructure there is. If I can voice a little bit of my frustration, the developer is a creative thinker. He has all kinds of ideas and the kinds of jobs that could go there, whether it be a hotel and whether we move, you know, some of the media cluster that you already have in downtown Oregon City there. And that's all well and good, but unless the nitty-gritty of memorandum of understanding with a specific timeline gets put in place, I would really not like to see us be put in a position of losing the funding dollars from the state, because that also, we kind of feel that we want to supplement those dollars. And also for me to continue to advocate for that at the board. I'm getting the sense that deadlines, so anything you can do that you can help. Obviously, you've done a great job planning. I know you're getting the zoning done. You've carried the weight of your piece of it. We see ours as hopefully helping to move those deadlines along, getting you some dollars, and then continuing to lobby at the federal level with our lobbyist, Paul Janik, with Carlotta Collette, who's done a great job, to get additional federal dollars for a public-private partnership. So that is our commitment to you. I was glad to be at that meeting, but please, if there's any way you can help us make the case with your economic development person and with Tony that these deadlines need to be met or the governor's office will, it's always a dicey thing if they don't feel that their deadlines are being met. So
Right.
that's the positive, and also the cautionary tale
Yes.
that I've been really working to try and make that happen.
Yes, and of course, our staff is aware of that.
Just had a brief
Yeah.
update. The property owner, you might not realize this, and I didn't till just a minute ago.
What, you had a meeting
The
this
property
morning,
owner
too?
actually signed
Mhm.
the land use application today.
Oh, I
This
did hear
afternoon.
that. I did.
Yeah.
That's
and
good.
of course, the deadlines, we have been reinforcing it at our level too. So I'm glad to hear we're
Yeah.
singing a stereo message to him, because really it's his responsibility to sign that land use application and then work with us on the easement. And the timing, the project really benefits all of us, including the property owner, and I think he's aware of that. So we're not anticipating missing any of these deadlines, and if we do, it will be something that we can't control.
No, and that's what we iterated today,
Yeah.
too, that, we want this to succeed. We want the development there because this is a legacy project. When you consider, first time in 100 years that river's
Yeah.
going to be open?
Yeah.
That's like huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's really huge. And again, I'm not as concerned. What we did give them is a packet from our economic development team of the various clusters that we've identified here in the county, which includes everything from manufacturing to healthcare to the new media digital cluster that you guys are really growing. And in fact, today too, I should mention this, David, that the buyer also met with Electric Entertainment because they appear as if they might be in need of additional space for sound stages and things of that sort. So,
Very cool.
so we are moving. Yeah, that would be very cool here because it would
Yes,
fit exactly
very cool.
what you need. So,
Yes.
so we see our role as the county is to try and get you the dollars and be the people that work with you on economic development and recruiting and getting what you need downtown. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, have you guys got any questions for me? Except I really feel sorry about the lawsuit. But I hope it's over soon.
we hope so too.
Not we don't feel good about this.
If it wasn't filed, we wouldn't have to worry about when it was over, but anyway.
Okay, it will all.
It
It
is
will.
what it is,
It will
you know.
all go away soon.
Yeah,
Sooner
yeah.
than later.
That's what courts are for.
Well, I do think the county and the city have been working on the relationship.
I think they have.
To,
I think they have,
to
too.
move things forward, and I know
Yeah.
that the city has struggled too with
Yeah.
citizens not thinking that we're listening and not being good with the money, and so I'm hoping that this commission has kind of moved that image
Okay.
a little bit back, but I'm not sure.
Well, I will make a point of saying that to the board. You are our host city. We should have, of all the relationships we have with our cities, you should be one of the primary relationships we work with. The only thing I will say, but I don't think this is just our county and you guys. I suspect, and I said this to Doug, I think it's going to play out across the state right now.
It
With
is.
this as a question
Yeah.
of public to public versus public to private.
Yes.
And I think we're just going to have to wait and see where it
Yeah.
stands. But it certainly is was not my first choice. But
Right.
it is what it is.
It is
So,
what it is.
I
Yeah.
think, too, that we need to realize that, there are cycles in all of these things, and we've had
Yeah.
wonderful relationships with the county in the past, and that'll happen again. So.
Oh, I don't have any doubt. I really love this city, and you've given me such wonderful kayaking opportunities.
Before you go, first of all, I do want to thank you, the partnership that we've had with the state, the Metro Regional Government, you and ourselves, in terms of the Heritage Project, has been a very good partnership. Many things are going to go forward, and we'll get the thing going. The project itself will be a long-term project. It's not going to happen that quickly. And as you know, our focus has been to be sure to get that public access out there, because that's going to be the draw of anybody that wants to be investing in that site, to know people are going to be there.
Yeah, I would say that that's the key to it, and I have stressed that with my board, that the public access component, if that doesn't happen, it would be a huge, huge loss, because you're correct. That's what's going to kind of be the catalyst of it.
Right.
And so, sometimes, people would say, well, no, it's all private sector. I'm thinking, no, in this case, opening up that river frontage and that access, it will spur the entire development. And we are truly poised with our economic development team. Once you get that easement and we get that planning done, but the easement's got to be nailed down. It can't be a preliminary.
Right.
It's got to be,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where and we did today truly with the developer, and I pushed, for me, I was actually kind of obnoxious, I thought. I said to my staff, I said, they said, oh no, you were just whatever. But I pushed that with them today. Yeah.
I also want to thank the county for your partnership with us on the Ermatinger House restoration.
Thank you.
Through community development block grants,
CDBG,
right? Which the project's starting. I don't know if everyone's nervous about it. I'm nervous about it. But I want to thank the county so much for that. Not only their original contribution to the project, but the additional contribution as well. And I think it is, broader than Oregon City.
Yeah.
This is a regional historic place that sometimes these regionally known historic places are so hard to keep around, and so I was sure probably in many moments through the last 15 years that I would never see this happen, and so I'm so excited that we are in the process of restoring the house, and all the partners, including the county, have really helped a lot, so I appreciate it.
Well, and I also want to thank you guys for moving ahead with the library. I was there tonight for the open house, too. And,
absolutely.
we haven't, we're still trying to work through issues at Gladstone, and you are like the bright star. on the library horizon.
It's exciting, yeah.
Going to do that. And, the CDB, Community Development Block Grant Funds, I'm glad we could do it, and I noticed that today. I walked by it to see that it was being, reconstructed. And I've started some preliminary conversations, and this is very preliminary, so I should be very cautious with what I say. But it would be nice to see. I talked to Kerry Timchuk today because he was at the Rotary Club. He's the head of the Oregon Historical Society. And I said, how do you get your funding? Okay, and they have a levy. And so I've just kind of started because of conversations over Moot and not just Moot, but the historic homes throughout and what we have throughout the county. It would be, I would like to see it as a legacy piece too, to see if there's some way we can do what we did with the library district, only with museums, and somehow come up with something. But that's just an idea right now. And I talked to our friend Karen Morey tonight, and we'll try and see if we can pull together the right folks and maybe have a conversation.
I would like to. I would
Would
definitely.
you like to do that, Rocky?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I wanted to say, I think I might have made a contribution to the community block grants contribution. I took a loan many years ago to do some repairs on the house and got a loan from the community block grant. And it's been a lien on my house, which I'm selling. So I paid off the lien, and that might have been some of the money that went into this. So I wanted to take some credit.
Well, that old historic Three Rivers barn, there's a $2,000 county lien on that too, because years ago they gave us money to finish the barn floor, but so far it's still in the family, so we don't have to worry about it yet.
That's funny.
And I just want to mention and thank you for the work that the county's done for economic development as well, and for tourism and creating the media niche, and really encouraging that. We just had a filming here.
Yes.
I saw that, the librarian.
And it's good to really, help the cities and the county kind of put their mark
They love it here. And
place.
Portland has tried to poach electric entertainment, but they like us so much so far they don't want to leave. But boy, we'd love to have a studio
Yes.
down in down there. That'd be a pie in the sky opportunity to do
And
that.
Jobs,
So
jobs, jobs.
that's right.
Yes. Yes.
And there's no place in this city that they haven't wanted to use for filming. But I am disappointed that our county staff kind of got a little freaked out when Portlandia wanted to film on our campus because they said that they were going to make fun of us. And I said, well, that was the point.
That was the whole picture of that show.
Why not? Haven't you seen our meetings? No, so anyway, they didn't. But I keep hoping that opportunity will come up again sooner than later.
Is there anything, David?
Yeah, I
David,
just
yes.
wanted to make sure, Commissioner Schrader, that I shared with you that you might know this, but your administrator and I are in Rotary together. And there's an old John Prine song called "In Spite of Ourselves," and it's about this married couple that I won't go into the details. It's a little bit of a frisky song, but it's we've decided that regardless of what these conflicts that arise at the staff level or other levels, we're going to succeed in spite of ourselves. And we've really all of our staff, I think, has worked hard, as has the county staff, at maintaining a sense of humor and knowing that these storms, when they come, sometimes reasonable minds can differ, and that's why we have courts to help us make those decisions. And I've assured Don that whatever the result of that is, and wherever it comes from, whatever the judicial or legislative authority is, that Oregon City won't be waiting around for encouragement to abide by whatever the changes are. So if there are any, we're going to be quick to respond and kind and make sure that we do the right thing.
And I'm hopeful there will be a methodology that can happen. I keep thinking that maybe the crux of the matter is the methodology, but I'll let better minds talk about that up until when the time comes, because I understand that you're a host city for a huge, infrastructure system here. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a fairness issue,
Yes,
too.
we are.
Thank you for saying that.
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha.
And hope you don't mind if I leave. I've got to go walk my dogs.
Oh, go walk your dogs.
Okay, I've gotta go there. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good to see you.
Now's the time for citizens' comments, but before that, I believe Catherine Castro has something she wants to present to us. I know what it is, but I guess I was supposed to wear a shirt, too.
Where's your
I
shirt?
didn't bring my shirt. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us why you're here?
And here's a microphone for you.
Oh, goody.
Oh, the eels.
Okay, is this on?
It probably
Is
is.
that on?
Yeah.
So my name is Catherine Costo, and I'm here because of these T-shirts, and Doug has decided to gift one to all of the commissioners.
Great.
Oh,
So
fun.
But I decided you couldn't simply wear the T-shirt without knowing what the T-shirt's about. So first you get gifted with an
Right.
information sheet about the creature that's on the T-shirt.
That's good.
I will spare you from reading it to you. You can read it yourself. But there are some other copies if people would like to.
Thank you.
Another one here. So the question we have here, Doug, is what sizes you wanted. I don't think we want to say that on the microphone.
Well, the sizes we might want are not the sizes we can wear.
That we can wear. That's right. I agree.
Anyway, I have a bunch here that are different sizes,
Yeah,
but
what we could
at some
do-
point we probably just need to round up and.
Right, what we could do.
Do you want to start the bag here?
We could know afterwards, people can check them and I can bring any extras back. Do you have a whole bunch of them? Is that it?
Yeah, I have a whole bunch.
Yeah, so that's what we'll do, but you should hold one up and demonstrate. You got one on.
You can see it, and here's some more information sheets for others who might want to read about lamprey. And we're just talking about Willamette Falls, which seems to be a good chance to introduce the lampreys.
This is, the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council is a watershed council that does not actually deal with major rivers. It deals with the streams that flow into the Willamette that have at least part of their origin in Oregon City. So predominantly that's the Abernathy Creek, the Parrot Creek, and Beaver Creek watersheds. We also have streams that go directly in that are smaller, but that's the purview. But many of these lampreys come into our streams and spawn in those streams, and everybody seems to use the salmon, and so is their logo. This is a very important part of the ecosystem, of the cultures that were here before, and it's still very important to a lot of the a lot of the tribes of the area. They used to be far more numerous. We probably had a lot of more vultures than we do now because there are not as many lampreys on the beaches for them to feed upon. But it's actually a very important piece of the ecosystem, and that's why the Great Oregon City Watershed chose that for its particular logo. And I think at one point or another you'll see that this body puts out signage on the various streams that they've had projects on. So we're working with the city and the county on that.
Yes, and I had the pleasure a few years ago going to the Eel Fest, taking the kids to the Eel Fest. Did you put that on? Was that?
No, that wasn't part of ours.
Different,
Okay.
but
Okay, that was very interesting.
I have a question, and that is, there was an article in today's paper about the lamprey at Bonneville, and it was talking about how they're making a comeback there. Is that the case in our ecosystem here?
Actually, she knows a great deal about the lamprey itself.
Okay.
Catherine, you want to come on up again? Now, I want to tell you, do not share all your knowledge about lamprey because we do want to get out before midnight.
Well then,
Right at the
all right.
And
So-
incidentally, she is a resident of Oregon City.
Yeah, I'm a resident of Oregon City. I'm a fish biologist with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. So I wrote the book about Oregon lamprey. That's why I know about them, which came out in 2002. And so just a little bit of background. Willamette Basin is probably the most important place for lamprey on the whole Pacific coast, including going up into Canada, because they are concentrated here and very productive here. In most other areas, including everywhere above Bonneville Dam and elsewhere on the Oregon coast, on the coast of Washington, all the way down to California, they are very rare or they're gone from those habitats. So they're kind of our own personal little treasure. We actually have 4 species in the Willamette. The Pacific lamprey is the big ones that go to the ocean. And we have another one that goes to the ocean that lives just below the falls and in the main Columbia. And we have 2 little ones that live only in fresh water. One of them is an endemic that, as far as we know, only lives in the lower Clackamas River. So it's our own personal species that was just recently redescribed. It was described and then the biologists weren't sure it was really there, and then it's just been recently reestablished as an endemic species in the lower Clackamas. So
What is its name?
it's a Pacific brook lamprey.
But does it have a
Pacific brook lamprey?
scientific name? Like is it Clackamai or something?
No. Yeah, actually, I can't remember what the scientific
Okay.
name was that the names of lamprey tend to get shifted around a little bit because they're still working on the taxonomy. I can't remember what the name was that they finally chose to establish for it. But anyway, so, this is a very important place for them, and they are rare, but they're still here. We do have the only fishery in the state on lamprey is at Willamette Falls. It's going on right now, and it's primarily for the tribes, but we do have some other people who fish there as well. And so I've given you a little bit of information about them in the handout with a nice photograph at the back of a tribal biologist holding one for you. So.
Thank you.
very much, Catherine.
Very interesting.
Now we're going to have people coming for our citizen comments for things that are not on the agenda. In general, we keep it to 3 minutes or less, and Marge and Rolla Harding combined get 6 minutes.
Yay.
I know it'll be a trial, but
Aren't you impressed with this contemporary
I am.
period?
What's a
clothes?
wide
Yes.
range?
Yeah, I like it.
it's all connected.
By the way, we're excited too, in seeing what's happening with the
Yeah.
Ermitanger
yes,
House.
yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
It gives us chills and reminiscing
Yes.
back. So, good job, you guys.
Yes.
Actually, what we're here for and why I'm dressed silly is as representative of the newly formed Oregon City or First City Ambassadors. And here on behalf also of Jonathan Stone in inviting you you need to get down there type of invitation for the First City celebration, which is next Saturday, the 26th of July. And he has worked tirelessly.
Yeah.
And he's made a lot of the rest of us work hard.
That's good, right?
Delegate.
And so, not able to be here tonight, but we said that we would extend the invitation, and there are going to be many living history activities, including Mr. Doug Neely as Dr. McLaughlin. But there,
Were you aware of that, Doug? By the way?
just wanted to remind
I
you.
was told that I was supposed to be the current mayor of Oregon City in this endeavor that evening.
Oh.
That evening.
Yes.
That evening,
Okay.
not during the day.
She's not going to let you out.
Yeah. Oh no way! No way.
This is a full, yeah.
This is a full day.
It means I'm going to have to change.
Oh wow! I'm sorry. Anyway, a lot of music, a lot of different bands, activities, art, vendors, food. So please come down and just have a good time and learn something also about your wonderful city, not only historic, but of course current, but especially the historic part. And so we really would like to see you down there.
We really appreciate the opportunity to have our heritage represented in this celebration. And Jonathan was very kind to involve us in planning that. And so in truth, it is the First City celebration, because that's what we're talking about. So yes, I second it. Please be there. We'll be looking for you.
Yes.
Ambassadors will be there. So come and get your coin. You probably need another elevator coin.
I think so. Right?
Another free ride on the elevator.
I want to thank you all for your work and for helping represent the historical aspects of our city. And I'm on the Main Street board, and that is something that was really important to us, and Jonathan's really carrying that out, is to really make this a First City celebration.
Absolutely.
Where really at the heart of it is the history of the city. So it's very exciting. This is going to be a great year for us, so please come down.
Please do. Thank you.
Just
Thank
so
you.
Just so there's no confusion, the Urban Tinker, which we just mentioned, is, as I understand it, is the place where the coin flip occurred that named Portland.
That is correct.
There's been the decision that we don't know how fair it was, so we're going to reflip the coin that evening. Now, that our city recorder doesn't know this, but in the first meeting of next month, there will be a proclamation. It may well be. It may well be that something gets renamed
that it's
a
Boston.
different name. So I'm just letting you know ahead of time.
He
that-
doesn't want to
that this is,
blindside you there.
That's right.
Future agenda item.
And that coin toss is up to all of the people that come. They are going to vote, do you want Portland to be heads or Portland to be tails?
I
And
want
of
to be
course
clear on this. This is very confusing.
It is
I'm a
extremely.
statistician. This is going to be a fair coin toss.
That's why, see, we don't know which side of the coin was
I just want to make clear that
And-
the votes don't determine the city. I want to be
No,
very clear on
votes
that.
do not
Just the side of
determine.
the
It's not
It's
that.
the
This is not a
side-
democratic thing at all.
It's the side of the coin. So don't get too excited, folks, because it is the side of the coin. They are going to toss it that night, 8 o'clock, Liberty Plaza. And of course, then you can wear your fine attire, Mr. Neely.
I don't have any.
That's what I mean. and so that will determine 2 out of 3 tosses.
And what we're hoping, if it happens to go the other way, there may not be another lawsuit.
Yeah, there you go. It's good to have hopes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much. Mr. Gifford.
Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, my name is William Gifford and I live in Oregon City. A couple of unrelated comments. One, I'm sorry that I missed the opening ceremonies this evening, but I just was over at a special work session and the session for the Clackamas Community College's Board of Education, and they did pass unanimously that there will be a bond measure on the no big surprise, on the November election.
Because I submitted a Trail News article already.
Excellent, excellent. Well, now it's official, and we crafted a little bit, and Commissioner Ludlow was there and made some good positive comments. So, the other comment that I wanted to make was just give some kudos to our city, particularly the Public Works Department. A few weeks ago, a crew was out, came knocking on my door, and said that they were replacing my water meter. Well, that's interesting. They're going around replacing old, leaky, inaccurate water meters, and I just think that's a really fine thing to do. And how knowledgeable the staff was, and how easy they were to talk to about the issue. And I'm just very, very proud of our Public Works Department and what they do for us. So I didn't know if anybody knew that they were doing that project, but. Yeah, it's nice work.
Of course, when you find out that the old meters were actually charging you less than they should have been, you may not be that happy.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, since I still have the green light, I'd be happy to point out that I use so little water. They asked me how many units I use, and I'm using about 1, maybe 2 units a month, which is far below minimums of anything. Yeah.
For shaving.
For shaving, yeah, I save it all in shaving. Yeah, no
Thank
problem.
you, William.
Thanks a lot. With that, we are going to go on to the adoption of the agenda. Is there anything anybody wants pulled? You can't pull anything from the agenda.
I'll check into it.
Okay, thank you. Hearing nothing?
Sorry.
That's okay.
8C.
8C, extension of the license agreement with Clackamas Heritage Partners. Okay, thank you. Any others?
I didn't have anything I wanted pulled. I just sent in a question about the Cold Plain asphalt milling machine.
Yes.
So I don't know.
I replied to your email. Was it sufficient for you?
I haven't seen it, so I imagine it was.
I'll be happy to talk about that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll be happy to talk about that if you need some clarification.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, with that, we're pulling 8C, and we'll tie that into, before the consent agenda, we'll make a decision on 8C. With that, we're going to open up public hearings for something has been worked upon for some time now, and we're getting an initial report on this, and that's our sign code update. So, Tony Conklin, you want to start us in?
Thank you, Mayor. Evening, Commissioners. So we've been working on updating the Oregon City sign code, and it began with discussions with the Commission during a retreat, funding the ability to do this work, entering into a contract, and then starting the citizen advisory team that participated in that project, the public involvement. And we're currently working with the Planning Commission through hearings as well as work sessions to finalize a recommendation that will be brought before the City Commission. When we originally did the public notice for this, we had to set dates for both the Planning Commission and City Commission. We've been before you and continued it because we were a little bit behind and still working with the Planning Commission. We're getting pretty close. We're down to the last couple of issues with the Planning Commission. We're meeting again with them to discuss this hopefully on July 28th. We're getting some pretty heavy agendas, so we tend to put this on last so that we can get through the land use issues, and if we have to bump this, we can, because it's not quite as time sensitive as some of the land use issues. But our intention is to be on the July 28th agenda to discuss this and hopefully get closer to a recommendation that we can bring before the City Commission. So I've brought tonight, we'd like to start some of the background, so the public participation that occurred, how some of the decisions and recommendations were made. And next to me is Ryan Orth, and he's been our lead consultant helping, and a lot of credit goes to Laura Turway on this. She was leading this up through most of this project. And they've done a very good job of trying to reconcile the comments that they've heard, working with the community advisory team and the public to come up with recommendations to be brought forward. So we're going to give a brief presentation on the public process, the decision making, where we're at, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions once we're completed with that. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to go ahead and give that presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Mayor and Commissioners, thanks for having me tonight. So our project team, and you may recall that this project kicked off in around July of 2013. So we were contracted by the Community Development Department and Planning Division. Laura Turway was our project manager. I'm with Enviro Issues. We're a public involvement consultant, and we had on our team as well UrbsWorks, which is a urban designer with some additional technical expertise in sign code development. As Tony mentioned, we helped to assemble a community advisory team, and I'll talk a little bit more about the process for that and their work in a while, as well as some early engagement of the community at large, both the residential community and business community. So on the onset of the project, we defined a couple of goals, one being that any new signage standards that were recommended should be safe, clear, and fair, and broadly supported by the community. In addition, as we introduce this to the community and in working with the community advisory team, we wanted to emphasize the legal requirements related to content neutrality, so that the standards can address the type, number, location, and other characteristics of signage, but not content. This graphic has some very fine print on it. I'm going to step through each of these phases in more detail, but I wanted to give you an overview of our process that was 3 phases, again beginning in last summer, starting with an early engagement of the broader community and using that information to feed into our more focused discussions with the community advisory team, and then leading into where we're at today, which is our adoption process. So focusing on the early engagement, which ran from about July to October of 13, we did a number of things and really wanted to get out there and get some early feedback to help inform the deliberations of a diverse group of more interested, involved, and expert voices. So we did so through a number of community briefings touching on city-sponsored committees and commissions, the neighborhood associations, Citizen Involvement Council we went to early on, and had a representative on our advisory team as well. So some early touches there. There were a few themes that came out of those early conversations that I would highlight that included some concern over the clutter that you see with signage, the need for better enforcement, and particularly around signs in the right-of-way that weren't permitted by the sign code, as well as some specific comments about electronic signage and whether or not that should or shouldn't be allowed, and billboards as well. So those were some themes that we used to focus our conversations later on. We have a project website that's still up and was used throughout our process to gather comments and notify folks about upcoming meetings. We have a email update list and did put a couple of articles in the citywide newsletter. So moving into the fall of 13, we did some recruitment to pull together a number of folks who would help us define recommendations that could go to city staff to develop some new standards. And they met 4 times between September and December of 13. Mayor Neely helped us to appoint those members, and they were really charged with identifying issues based on the feedback that we had gathered in that early phase, as well as from their own perspectives. We tried to put together a diverse group that could represent both, again, the residential and business sides of the equation, as well as folks who had some expertise in the sign industry. And over the course of those 4 meetings, which all but one occurred in this very chamber, we had a lot of great conversation focused on the existing code and where there were strengths and maybe some deficiencies there, as well as looking at, again, the feedback that we had compiled not only in the early phase but throughout those months when they were meeting. There were some themes that I would highlight real quick through those conversations. One was striking a balance between the flexibility of any new sign standards versus the certainty that those standards would provide. We looked at adjusting the sign code potentially to match the different contexts of land use that the city has currently and is planning for through the comp plan, and potential new signage types or new prohibitions on signage. And then again, the theme of reducing clutter and improving the relationship to maintenance of signage. So those were a few themes that came out of our conversation. In conjunction with our 3rd meeting in November, we held a community open house here where we elevated some of the stickier questions that had come up through those conversations. So there were 13 questions, and we did a dot exercise on the wall here where participants could address these questions that were still open and needed some additional community input. And we used the results of that exercise combined with our community advisory team's input on those issues to put together some draft recommendations where we saw some similarities between where the community participants who are interested and engaged in these topics and where the community advisory team were coming together. That helped us to draft some strong recommendations. And we used those at our final meeting in December to do some voting and determine where we had consensus or majority or some still remaining split issues. And that would form the basis of the recommendations to staff. So there is a final report that provides a fair amount of detail about each of these issues in the discussion, as well as the process leading up to them. But you can see that there were a number of recommendations where we had a strong consensus around enforcement, a mural standard which wasn't in the existing code, and some additional detail around signs that are owned or operated by Oregon City. So the majority recommendations were those that we didn't have an absolute consensus, but a strong majority. And you can see that addressed signs in the right-of-way, banners which weren't currently permitted or aren't currently permitted in the code, non-conforming signs, and existing billboards. There were a number of additional issues where there was a split opinion, and those are also documented in the report. Those included allowing new billboards, where any electronic message centers, and that's a technical term for electronic signs, should be allowed, and also the number of temporary signs that should be allowed on private property. Some feeling that there should be more than others. So those the range of opinions, and in the case of the majority recommendations where there are minority opinions, are spelled out here, and we can talk about them if you have questions. And so with that, the report went to city staff, and we entered the adoption phase. So I'd like to hand it back to Tony to talk a little bit more about where we're at right now.
So as we started the adoption process, we did all of our public noticing requirements for changing the code, and then we started that reviews with the Planning Commission. We did mail out notice to all the property owners within the city, and as I stated earlier, we've been working through with the Planning Commission on reviewing the document, getting their input, taking public testimony. We just had a work session on this where we had some additional input, and like I said, hopefully we're going to get those edits updated, and hopefully at the next meeting get a little bit closer to having a recommendation that we can bring forward. I would envision having a work session with the City Commission to discuss what the Planning Commission recommendation was. So our next hearing is on July 28th. As Ryan said, there's been, there's two parts to this. There's the code, and then there's also the enforcement, the staff, and the expenditure of money to do that. And we've tried to separate the two. We want a code that we think makes sense, meets the needs of the community. And then, we realize that there is an enforcement component of this, of which, I'm continuing to meet with my staff, building staff, code enforcement staff, to kind of talk about how do we do this, and how do we enforce this. And depending on what the final product looks like, will have impacts on either what the investment is to accomplish that, or an understanding of that it's going to take a little bit longer based on whatever the outcome is. If it's significant, it may take a little bit longer if we're going to try to do that with the existing resources that we have. One thing that we are working with Public Works on is trying to get an understanding and inventory of the existing murals in the community and how we'd like to handle those, promote those. They tend to be, because of how we need to treat all signage, we can't just say, if it's for art, we're going to exempt. So we have this content neutral component that makes it a little bit more difficult. But we think we've identified a way utilizing an arts commission to address murals, which in most cases exceed the size requirements allowed in our code. So we're trying to get an inventory of the existing murals right now so that we can inventory them, identify them, and then have that as a baseline moving forward. Really, where there was consensus and majority, this started with the citizen advisory team, and those recommendations came to staff, of which then we tried to work with those to write a code that's consistent, and put the language together to implement what we were hearing from that CAT team. Where there was an agreement, we left the code the way it was. There are certain areas where if there's not agreement, we weren't going to change it. And so those will be issues that can be brought forward if the City Commission, while they're reviewing this, has a disagreement, or they see where there was disagreement and would like to weigh in on that. We believe that as the final policy decision maker, that's the role that you should play. You can see the discussions that happened and the pros and cons of each side, and you can make that decision if you so choose. I'm trying to avoid getting into code specifics now because I'd really like to bring you a clean recommendation from the Planning Commission. But if you do have questions about the public involvement process, or you've heard things about the code, or have questions about, we'd be happy to answer them. But that's why I didn't give you the draft code recommendations for tonight. We are trying to finalize that, and we can bring it back and have that discussion in a more comprehensive work session.
Yes.
So with that, we'll go ahead and conclude and answer any questions you may have.
I think I've got all kinds of notes written on this thing, but I don't think that's what we're going to be doing now. But one of the things I'd like to ask, if we thought there was something that wasn't thought about in this process, and I've got at least one thing, to have the opportunity to mention that.
Do you have something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great to hear. Yeah.
Well, one thing that was stated there is that, city signs should follow the same, I think it was mentioned, should follow the same code requirements. We have several signs in Oregon City that are directional signs to historic places and so on. It occurred to me that, and I don't think it's discussed here, whether businesses could actually procure small, limited number of directional signs that'll get them off of main streets or something directed to where their business might be, if that's something that could be considered in this process.
So directional signage in the right-of-way.
Yes, it would be something they would have to pay for. Now, we see it on state highways, I mean, all the time, interstates and so forth. But, when I saw it, and I'm sure it's because of the location, but when it put in the jug handle, we had a specific gas station that was flagged. It got flagged at other places because the same access wasn't there.
Yeah.
But whether there's a benefit businesses could benefit from by having very small, strictly not advertising, but strictly directional signs. One business owner mentioned that to me.
We'll look into it. I don't think that we necessarily contemplated the purchasing of.
Well, if it's going to be in our right of way.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
so this
is
is something that we can look into.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. We're doing. We get in trouble with the county by treating businesses differently.
But we tend to see that with the advertisement, let's say on Main Street of the banners that go up on our light posts. So it could be something similar to that. But we can look into that and try and get an answer for you.
In regards to the murals, I knew that we all knew that was going to be a major topic. I think I understand the recommendation, which would permit murals separately. It sounds. I mean so they would be looked at separately, but in the same. But I'm not sure to what degree you can, based on the content neutral standards, because if someone paints a sign on a building, it's a mural, right?
Depending on the size of it, correct.
Okay,
yeah.
so
if you're exceeding the size requirements,
Okay.
That's where we set up the Arts Commission to be the review authority.
If there was an Arts Commission.
Well, that's where we're working with Public Works.
Right.
That's why that is so important.
That would maybe lead to that. Okay,
Right.
great.
Yeah.
The other general section, there was a section that talks about government signs, and I think it's about how to determine government signs separate from grant-paid signs. There's a whole section that talks about that. Can you explain? I think I kind of know what it's addressing, but I would like a little bit more of explanation of what that's really targeting.
Commissioner Smith, I as I recall the conversation from about 9 months ago, there were some comments, and they weren't. They were amongst the discussion around whether or not government signs should be held to the same standards as non-government-owned signage, and the complicating factor of whether or not a sign, perhaps that was held by a non-government entity, was actually funded through a government grant, and making sure that the definitions were comprehensive and deep enough to address those types of issues. So where you may have read that, it was just a discussion point.
It wasn't so much as to identifying which are which. It was really whether or not the standards are the same or consistent.
That was the primary recommendation, was that government signs be held to the same standard.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and the reason I asked that, and that may be a whole nother topic when we talk about later, is there are signs all up around the city which appear to most citizens as city directional signs that are actually not city directional signs. They're actually Clackamas Heritage Partner directional signs, or a separate organization of the city, which I think is very confusing to people, so I was wondering if that was, so that's a kind of a separate topic. I don't know if it's really something to tackle within the sign code, but it's more of a visual kind of communications thing that we should think about in the city, I guess. But and then when it comes to the billboards, it said we really only have 16 in the city. I was trying to count them. It seems low, but that number 16 is the total number of billboards within the city. Mm-hmm. And they're prohibited currently, right? I mean, that's our sign code says they're not allowed, but the existing sign code was created after those were already in, or
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
they're pre-existing non-conforming.
okay.
Yes.
All right. So the question really for the new one, that our new update, is whether or not we keep consistent and allow new ones in the future, and that's pretty much the only question.
Yeah, the one I love my planning commissioners. They threw me a little curveball at the last meeting. A couple of these with them. We had discussions all along, and you may recall we had a 10-year amortization of the sign code,
Yes.
which in 2004 or 5, somewhere in that area, I think the 10 years came up. The decision was made that we weren't going to do that. The amortization would have required us to go to all the property owners, make them remove their non-conforming signs or non-permitted signs. That didn't happen. Policy decision was made then, and we've never revisited it. And so we took it out. The planning commission at the last meeting raised it, and this is, I'm just giving you this so you can start thinking about this, was that they wanted to insert the amortization and removal clause again and make it 2 years instead of 10 years. So I was, that's another thing we're going to talk about on July 28th is we
Wow.
put together that information. So that will be one of the decisions as the policymakers that you'll need to think about and discuss and give direction to staff on how to address that issue.
I have one. This will probably be the most specific question I have, but the rest I'll save because I have a whole list of questions, and it's so huge. I think I spent most of the last several days trying to go through it all, and I didn't finish all of it. But so there's so much, and they leads to so many other questions. So one of the other questions I would have is there was many times where the recommendations would say this type of sign is okay in this type of in this part of the city in terms of zoning, and some are and some aren't. So there were some differences with, I think one of them might have been murals. That there was a recommendation with murals saying anywhere that a business would be located.
Non-residential.
But that concerns me too, and I think we'll talk about. I mean, that means maybe community buildings that we're building, or schools, or all these things. Does that mean murals are not okay there? So there's those type of questions that I think I'll have when we get more fine-tuned into it, and then things like banners are okay in certain places, but not in historic districts.
Yes.
Well, what if there's an event that's in a historic district, and historically banners were probably used all over the place. So when we get down into those specifics, I think it might be fairly tedious, but I think most of the recommendations are excellent, and I just am so thankful that these citizens volunteered their time to go through it, because it's not fun.
No.
There's so many components of it, and every time you think you may have solved one concern, it opens a whole bunch of other issues, and it's a little overwhelming. Not a little, it's a lot overwhelming. So anyway, thank you.
Commissioner
Thank
Roth.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I think I agree it would have been a terribly tedious job to do this. I have just a really few comments that I wanted you to think about in writing what you're going to be presenting to us. And then I saw quite a few references here to what is called a small sign. And I just thought, what's a small sign? Is that a button on my shirt, or is that, what is that? And then there was talking about billboards on major thoroughfares. Is 7th a major thoroughfare, or how are we going to define those?
And so, and that was one of the, and I'll just jump on that one real quick because there was a lot of discussion
Yeah.
around billboards and
Yeah.
electronic signs.
Yeah.
And, should we allow them in the city? Or should we allow them on major arterials, 213, 99E,
Right.
112, or should we maintain our existing policy? And there really wasn't an agreement, so we left it the way it was.
Okay.
But just to show you some of the thought process and questions that came up by the CAT, and trying to tackle that question
Yeah.
of how do we address these?
Right. This had to be really difficult. And then flags. Where do flags fall? I didn't see them addressed in here. Are they a banner or?
So
Attention. Well, I
within
think
within the code that you'll see forthcoming, there are some new definitions that help us to articulate flags versus banners versus what we talked about as well. And there's a suggested new prohibition for these feather signs, which are you'll see them at a lot of
Everywhere.
gas stations. They're oftentimes in that buffer zone between the sidewalk and a parking lot. So those are spoken to within the definitions.
Okay, and then just two more. One is, I was confused by the page 8 at the very top sentence says signs in the right-of-way should be allocated by tenant space or entrance rather than frontage. What does that mean?
Let's see, A-frame. This was dealing
Yeah,
with
A-frames.
A-frame.
Right.
Yes.
So in a mixed-use context or in a multi-tenant situation,
Right.
Versus
Does everybody get to put a sign out front?
right. That was the question. If you only allowed signage in the right-of-way per property, then you would forego the opportunity to. For multiple tenants to negotiate that. So that was one of the things that we talked about. How do we account for that context?
Okay.
And does that require a different standard, or will we have a uniform standard?
Okay.
And the Planning Commission had several discussions on this issue because really the crux of the issue is you could have on Main Street, you could have multiple 25 lots, parcels, properties, right? And each one of those 25 feet could have an A-frame.
Yeah.
You could have one property that takes up three quarters of the block that has 5 establishments in it, but they only get one. And so there was that. How do we address this equity issue? Should it be based on spacing? Should it be based on number of
I feel like we're going to be
clients?
tripping down the street is what.
And that was another
Yeah.
concern, is the
Yeah.
clutter associated with the public right-of-way.
Yeah.
And how do you manage that? How do you ensure you can get out of cars safely, get into businesses safely, maintain your ADA access along the public
And when
right-of-way?
it's raining, you want to walk next to the building.
Right.
Yeah.
So, they went around with quite a bit of that. So I think when you see the final recommendation, and we'll make sure we revisit that and have that discussion, because allowing A-frames in the city and permitting them is a big step for us, because technically they're prohibited.
Right. Okay, and my last question, and I don't even know if this is, you guys let me know if this is legal to even ask. How about offensive? Yeah, and that's conditioned
That's
by.
a slippery slope.
Stay away from it.
Okay.
You can ask a question, you just can't get an answer.
Good answer, okay.
I think the CAT team got tired of hearing content neutral from the staff and the
neutral,
attorneys.
yeah. It's true.
Why can't we just say retail or real estate signs are okay on Saturdays?
Yeah.
How do you know it's retail or real estate? So.
Yes, it's true.
Well, I'm kind of going beyond those. I'm going to a different area, but
Commissioner Moon.
I too wanted to thank everybody that worked on this. I have to say, just like South End concept plan, I think staff did an awesome job of reaching out to the citizens. I have seen this advertised and talked about a lot in my community, and I totally appreciate it. And I do feel that you did hear what the citizens have to say, and not always agreeing with them. I think it was a tremendous struggle for this committee, and I appreciate them. A couple of my questions had already been answered about the banners on fences. That was a pretty interesting discussion, I think. And you called it a feather flag. I call it kind of like one of those wave flags. So was that addressed in this? I didn't see.
It was.
It is in there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes they're called attention flags, feather signs. So.
Are those the blowing ones? Is that what you're talking about? The ones that blow?
They
No.
have.
Then there's
We call those
in there, too.
air-blown signs, real
ones,
original.
too.
And
They're different. Okay.
We did try to differentiate some of
okay.
these. Yeah.
There's a lot of different signs.
There were. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I didn't provide you in the attachments the actual working draft
No,
of
but
the
I was-
code.
yeah,
So when I do provide you that, you'll start to see some of these specifics, and we can
Okay.
certainly come back to revisit those.
Yeah. It's perfect. Thank you.
I may have missed it when I went through it, but was there any reference at all to licensed home-based businesses? in
Yeah,
terms
a
of
little bit.
in terms of signage.
Yeah, there was a little bit.
Yes, and that was actually another discussion point of the commission concerning the appropriateness of freestanding signs in a residential neighborhood for a home occupation business, and so that's another one of the outstanding issues that we're working through. There was definitely some opinions on the planning commission about the appropriateness of those type of signs in neighborhoods.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Carol.
This is a big issue with a lot of different little levels. For specific questions, I'm just waiting to see what happens with the planning commission process and then to see the draft that we have. But a bigger issue for me that I'm interested to see how it's going to be handled is enforcement. Is that going to be addressed after the draft comes back? Or how is that going to fit in? Is the same committee going to try to vet those issues, or is it more?
Staff is preparing some recommendations. I guess how I'm proposing to do it is bring the code. Once we get through that, and then we can come back and discuss the ramifications of the preferred code. A 2-year amortization is going to take a lot more work than not having one. So there's a couple ways to look at that. So we would bring that back. Since the Planning Commission really doesn't have the responsibility of determining staffing levels, we understand enforcement is important to them. We'll have that discussion with them.
Okay.
But in the end, that discussion is with you. We've had this conversation several times in the past. And so we're putting together, fees that would be appropriate for signs within the right-of-way to help start to fund some of the enforcement issues and the management that's going to happen if we do open up our public right-of-ways to signage, which we historically haven't. So, examples of other jurisdictions, what they charge, how to reorganize our fees, and then what's realistic in terms of enforcement opportunities with existing funding and staffing levels or other alternatives.
I just think it's very important to make sure that we have a sign code that can be enforced. To be consistent and make sure that it's possible and
I'm
sensible.
so glad you mentioned that, because if you recall, that was one of the topics we grappled with in the retreat. And it's actually something we're living with today and have been for some time, having a code that says one thing and then recognizing that we're almost affirmatively deciding not to react except on a complaint-driven basis, and that that causes lots of other heartburn for people depending on who's complaining. So I'm glad you're focused on that, because that's going to be one of our discussions at the staff level. We don't want to recommend anything if we can't enforce it. So
Doesn't our code enforcement kind of they're reactive, not proactive, correct?
That's been the tradition here. We're trying to look at this one, though. We haven't even decided internally whether this would be code enforcement or if there would be a special sign code enforcement unit within CD. We haven't figured that out yet either, because sign code is a little different than some of the other codes, and there are some land use components to it. So we're trying to figure out cross-training and who would do what. But we'll have that buttoned up by the time we get ready to enact something.
Thank you.
I had one more question, and that was there any consideration given to, I don't know how to describe these, but signs that I've seen in some cities where everything's on a corner post, and they're small and they're easy to change out rather than A-frames or whatever?
On a corner post, like on the building or on
No,
the
like
ground?
on a street corner, and it's a decorative post, and I've seen them where they're both one-sided and two-sided, and so here's all the businesses in this block. And
I see.
Sure, like a banner on a pole, but not across the street, but just hanging off the street pole.
Yeah, and they just be plaques of types.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think they have those at Cannon Beach, don't they?
I think
Those
so.
were discussed at the CAD, and I believe that they're addressed in the draft code, both signs sort of across the right-of-way that you would put up for an event.
Right.
As well as signs that might be used to designate a historic area or a neighborhood, sort of announcing that you've entered a certain part of the city. So yes, those are defined and discussed.
Okay, thank you.
I guess you could put that together with question my directional signs too. Is that-
Yeah, I think it'd be
sort of
very
public-
similar.
Yeah, that would be.
We have one of our members of the planning commission.
We had
which is-
Mr. Commissioner Smith
There's
had one
one
more.
more thing that that's the thing with this. There's so many. I'm wondering. I don't know if this would be considered within sign code or not, and I'm thinking to gateway arch kind of things, where it's a mix between maybe art and signage. Because I know, at least in the Main Street, they're starting to talk about entrance ways, whether or not that's across the road or not. So that might be something. I don't know if that was ever brought up, how that would fit in. The only thing I had kind of that might kind of fit in there was this one bit in all of that document that said something about, and I had a real question about it. Signs that, let's see if I can find the wording, that are integrated into the building. There was that was one of the other pages. There was something referring to, I think it was saying that it would not be, there would not be a permit for signs that were integrated into a building. And I was trying to think, what does that mean?
Signs carved into or part of materials that are
Okay.
integral part of a building.
Like the Weinhardt building down there.
Yeah, that,
Okay. Oh, like the. So I wonder how, gateways to the city would fit into that, and if that was addressed at all.
Okay. I'm going to have to get back to you a little bit because we did make some changes. Essentially it's the city's right of way.
Right.
And so how would we treat that in terms of a public project?
Okay.
any other questions for the commissioners? Planning?
I guess my only I want to thank the mayor did come to the planning commission and thanked the CAT members. Their names are up on the screen right now, who did volunteer their time to be a part of this process, and we did acknowledge their service. So we really do appreciate the hard work. It was a lot of commitment, many hours reviewing a lot of code and sitting in a room together to try to come to consensus on some issues that were very difficult. So tonight, we are recommending that the City Commission take public testimony for anyone here who wishes to testify, and then continue the hearing to the September 17th hearing date.
I noticed in your scheduling before we opened up to the public comment, you had a lot of meetings with neighborhood associations that are coming up. Is that right?
We already did.
Those
that
are
was
all
that
done.
was part of our
Those
community
were all
engagement
done.
last
Okay.
year. Yes.
2013.
Okay, those are 2013. So, okay, very good. With that, I have our planning commissioner, Bob Mahoney, wishes to come up and say something.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. I'm here strictly as a private citizen, not as a member of the planning commission. I think that would be inappropriate for me to speak for them, and I certainly don't do that. Just a few comments regarding my experience with 5 different public jurisdictions. They've all scratched their head over sign codes, and we've got to remember we're citizens of the United States, and it's born into our DNA that we get to speak freely as loudly as we want to on any street corner, and it sort of trickles down into the DNA of a sign code. People just, you can't tell me where to put a sign, yada yada yada. Well, you'll work out the technical issues of the sign code, and Commissioner Roth, was it you that said, what does that mean? I agree with you. We got to keep it simple so that everybody knows what it means, so we don't get buried in minutia. But question: this issue of the administration versus the enforcement, 2 separate words of the sign code. The fire marshal would not give an occupancy permit to an industry that had hazardous material on its premises without the proper permits. The building official would not give an occupancy permit to a building that was not safely constructed. the planning department wouldn't issue an occupancy permit for a site plan that didn't have the appropriate off-street parking spaces. Now, the question is, are you going to allow a non-conforming business in terms of its signage to operate if it's not in accordance with the sign permit? You've got to ask that question. Are we going to allow them to operate? They don't comply. Maybe they sneak in there at midnight, put up a sign that, throws pizzas up in the air. I had that asked me one time. Well, he backed away. But it's a simple process, and it's not enforcement as much as it is administration. And it's tied to the business permit, that the business owner submits that he is in compliance with the sign ordinance, gives pictures to that effect, the existing signs and what have you. Every year you issue that building permit or renew it, or not business license. You renew that, and it's just every business person in the state of Oregon understands that they have to operate within the confines of the city ordinance. And so my thinking is, in order to reduce the expense of having a uniformed officer or administrator walk up the sidewalk, knock on the door and say, you're out of conformance, that's not a pretty picture. But when they come in and make application for a business license, they confirm with the city, acknowledge with the city that they are in compliance with the sign ordinance, and the business license is issued. Any new sign within a year is referred to, and there's a record kept. And it would seem to me that that would be the simplest way to do it, and the most efficient way to do it. So it would follow right along with all of the permits that you issue under the building department and under the fire marshal and whatever else you issue. So that's just a thought that I want to share with you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. With that, we have a item poll.
No,
Do we
you have to
make a
continue
motion?
Oh, that's right.
I move to continue PC 14-077 Oregon City Code Update Planning File L14-01 Presentation of the Oregon City Sign Code. Is that right? Public process moved to
September 17th.
September 17th.
Very good. Second?
I second.
Very good. Well, I was jumping ahead. We've got a unanimous vote on the motion, put forward by Commissioner Mumm and seconded by Commissioner Pauly. Ermitinger funding, an amendment coming on our amendment on the Ermitinger House, and that'll be Scott Archer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, this is a pretty straightforward one for you. The county would like to give us more money for the Ermitinger House through the CDBG grant, the Community Development Block Grant. Some of you alluded to this earlier.
Can I move to accept?
Thank you. We have
Commission, just so you're clear, that's a federal program. The county administers it for us, so it isn't actually county funds.
No.
Right.
But we're in a pool, a larger pool of cities, and we joined that pool so that the county could administer it, so that everyone could have when there were special needs for large projects, everyone could sort of pool their resources.
Yeah.
So they're the administrator of it only, but that's
But
how.
it's not their money.
Yeah.
So we initially received $130,000, entered into an agreement last year for that grant, and some additional funds became available because of I think some other projects that weren't going forward, so they put that back into a pool, and we requested additional funding initially, so they decided to award an additional $80,000 out of that available money. So our total has increased to $210,000 for the project, and this is an amendment to that original agreement. And as you well know, the project over at the Ermitinger House has just gotten underway this week, and activity, you'll see it increasing quite a bit here in the next several days and coming weeks. So staff recommends approval of the amendment to the agreement.
Before we go there, I have one question. Do we have, now, we've had funds from other sources, is that not
Mhm.
correct?
That is correct.
Now, the question is, do we have sufficient funds to take it to completion, or is this a
Yes.
phased project?
What
Well,
was
it's
the last-
phased project,
Yeah.
but I mean, is the phasing, are all
This-
the aspects of the funding in place for the
Yes.
phasing?
This completes that. This was the last missing piece. We had known for a while that this was likely going to be filled in, but this has become just official as of July 1st. And so, yes, we are at the level that we need to be funded, and we're going through with the entirety of the project.
Right.
Yay.
Yes.
One question. Because the project is happening right now, I think at one time I asked about this in the early stages of this. Are we going to be posting some sort of a sign? I think we should have some sort of sign that refers to some sort of completion date, or give some notice of what we're doing there, and then also add to that the partners and the funding sources involved, so that when people go by, they don't think we're tearing the thing down, which it very much looks like was what we're doing. I think we need to put something out there just to kind of give the public an idea of what's going on, when it'll be completed. Something not very detailed, but something.
Yes, we're doing that.
Okay, good.
Thank you for that, and we're doing just that. We are waiting for the full construction fencing to go up around the perimeter.
Okay.
It's just we're
Okay.
just kind of getting started, but
Perfect.
You'll see a full perimeter fence in the near future, and on that fence you'll see some acknowledgement signage that actually required by the CDBG grant,
Right.
but also we're adding some additional city acknowledgements on there.
Okay.
And
So
your
you'll have some
updated
nice-
cell phone too, I think was.
What?
I'm just kidding. Your updated
Yeah, if
cell
anyone
phone.
wants updates on the Ermitinger House, just photographs. I'm posting them frequently on my Northwest Ghost Tours Facebook page, so they'll be constantly up there. But I'm going out of town, so there might not be pictures for weeks. I think Scott's very happy because people are saying if I was in town, I'd probably be sitting out there camping, watching this thing, and it's probably better than I don't.
We'll be taking lots of photographs
Pictures, okay, good.
to document the project
Good.
construction.
A live camera would be amazing.
Will there be a website? I don't want you to do this. It's just I'm asking. Will there be a website that follows the project? Or
No, we're not planning on doing that. It's really a fairly condensed. I mean, it's
Okay.
not a long process, and a lot of what will happen is kind of interior. And but we'll have some photographs available. Maybe we can do a presentation or something like that at some point.
And will your signs conform to the sign code?
They are going to be on a fence.
I hope so.
I said.
Temporary construction signage. I think we're okay.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we need a motion to approve that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I move to approve 14-423 Ermitinger funding number 1. Is that right? To Community Development Block Grant IGA between Clackamas County and Oregon City.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Mum, and it's unanimous vote. Thank you. We wanted 8C, extension of the license agreement with the Clackamas Heritage Partners, pulled for discussion and action.
Okay. I just had a couple of questions. Really, it's actually I want to kind of get the feedback from the rest of the commission on a bit of this. The original was July 2012 was the agreement when we signed the agreement for Clackamas Heritage Partners to operate the End of the Oregon Trail site, and that expired in December. Part of that agreement was because of the termination of the past agreement, we wanted to make sure that we had some accountability to some degree on how CHP was doing within our building and things like that. So that agreement in 2012, I think, included so many things that has been a benefit both for CHP and the city in terms of our ability to know how things are going at the end of the Oregon Trail. Things like having a commissioner on the board. I'm currently on the CHP board, and so that was part of that agreement. The annual or the quarterly reports and the notification to the city when CHP applies for grants, which they've applied for many. All of those pieces of the agreement in the last 18 months, I think, have worked great. I think have, and I'm sure Scott could speak to this too, I think feel like we have a better understanding of what happens at the end of the Oregon Trail and kind of keeping tabs on that. But even with that, when I first saw this agreement to renew for the next year and then have it continually renew itself year after year after year, I was kind of concerned a little bit about that at first. One, because I think sometimes when we do that, it's easy to not keep tabs or to know what's going on, which is I think why we got into the situation we were in before. So I kind of want to know how you feel. There's things in the original agreement that I think counteract that. All the things that are in the original agreement are still there essentially. Especially one which is, as far as I can tell, and this is maybe a legal question, but it looks like the two pieces in the renewal are, the extension for the next year and it continuing on, and that everything else is in place. So that section 2, which refers to renewing annually on December 31st, unless either party notifies the other within 30 days before the end of the contract. That just replaces the section 1 of the original agreement, right? Section 6 of the original agreement still is in place.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So, I mean, Section 6 talks, in the original agreement, talks about the fact that basically the city has the power, I'm assuming under the city manager, to revoke the license at any point, at any time, for any reason. So with that, I mean, that's pretty powerful. It means we can pretty much do that at any time of year, regardless of what the renewal date is. I guess the concern, though, that I have is as staff is completely overwhelmed, as the commission changes, as these other things, as CHP board changes, do we forget that this thing is renewing itself every year, even with all these other things? And so my question, I guess, to the commission is, I feel that because of that section 6 of the original agreement, we're pretty much covered to do whatever, but if the commission changes, does the commission know that exists?
It's there.
And so I don't necessarily know that we need to formally redo the agreement every single year, as long as we have someone on the board, as long as we do all these things. But I'm wondering if it wouldn't be good to just maybe every 2 years or every 4 years. I don't know, that there's some method that it kind of comes back to the city as a reminder, even with all the other things in place. So that's one question I really want to get your feedback on. I can kind of go either way. I've been debating it in my head. The other question goes back to the original agreement as well, which for the first time well, at least I shouldn't say for the first, as far as I understand, there hasn't been a lot of money since the opening of the end of the Oregon Trail in the 90s that goes from CHP to the city in terms of rent or in terms of just helping the building. The first time that I think we've ever done that is in this agreement, which was basically saying you can use our building and apply for grants as long as $20,000 goes back into the building. And that $20,000, at least when we signed the first agreement, in my mind was very much connected to that first agreement, that 18 months. And they actually did contribute at least $20,000. They may have put more in towards the building in terms of the painting of the hoops. So I felt that was met. So the question would be an ongoing, and there's also a reference underneath that to saying, in addition to the $20,000 put back into the building with that first agreement, that CHP would work in good faith to seek funds and maintenance and the operation in the future. Now that's pretty vague. So my question is if we, renew this, even just for the next year, do we want to be specific as to how or how much they contribute to the building? And I think that's very hard to do, whether it's a percentage or whether saying if they have grants in the future that some of that applies to the building, or if we just are comfortable with saying this good faith effort to continue helping maintain and operate the building. Because we have very, in theory and in all the meetings, CHP is very much, and in working with Scott, very much showing that they have every intention to continue to deal with the problem of fixing all the issues that building has, which are a lot. I'm just wondering if we want to be more specific than just good faith, and then maybe that Scott has some opinion on that, because to me that $20,000 really was for that first 18-month agreement, and so I don't know that, and that was also based on a grant that we knew they were applying for and had some way to quantify how much we were saying, how much they were going to contribute to the building. I think it's hard to then in the future say you're going to contribute this much when we don't really know the grants that in the future that they're applying for or anything. So I don't know if there's a way that we can kind of in the agreement allude to or come to some agreement on how Clackamas Heritage Partners in the future will contribute to the maintenance of the building.
I think I can shed a little bit of light on that if you want me to. I would say that, and those are good points. The comment about the agreement and the duration of this being basically at this point it's puts in kind of an indefinite. However, every year it's renewing itself. The commission very much, or the city has very much control over the. At any point in time with 30 days notice, there's a lot of safeguards in there. So I'm not concerned about that. If the commission is, then that's certainly your prerogative. As far as the financial investment or the commitments from CHP, I would say that working over the last, we're actually into this a couple of years, and the agreement did expire at the end of last year, and we just had some time lapse there to get this back in front of you. So I apologize for that, but. The working relationship from the staff level has been going very well. I will tell you that. I think it's also been very helpful to have a commissioner serving on the board and having that presence and that connection has strengthened the situation. The financial part of it, that first agreement did call specifically for that amount that you're talking about, Commissioner. They far exceeded that in that time span. The amount of grants that they pulled in for some facility stuff, the painting of the hoops, and actually a couple of other smaller things, probably was 2 to 3 times that amount. I'd have to look at the records exactly. And I will tell you that the folks at the CHP are endeavoring to. They are really making significant efforts to get funding to specifically invest in the needed facility improvements, and without their help, because as a private nonprofit organization, they're able to seek some grant funds that we're really not even going to be able to go after. So they're doing that. They're rounding up donations. So there's a lot of things that are in the works even right now, and I can just tell you that while not a specific amount is committed to, they're probably exceeding anything that we put in the original agreement, and I see no reason to believe that they're not going to continue to do that. We have regular conversations, and there are conversations going on right now about some specific funding opportunities that are coming up that we're working on, and that hopefully we'll be able to get some additional investment into the facility. So things have been good that way. And I guess my final comment would just be that I think it's important to remember too, in this arrangement that we have under this license agreement, in addition to putting things into the building and actually, specifically raising funds and putting them back to the city's own buildings, they're providing a service that we, at least currently, otherwise would not be able to provide. We don't have the staffing, we don't have the resources, so they're providing the service to operate the interpretive center from a programmatic standpoint, and they're doing a lot with that. So I think that's a significant investment on their part that we haven't particularly quantified what the financial impact of that is, but it's significant, and it's more than we would be able to do without some type of budgetary change in how we operate that site. So
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Have Mr. Pauly?
Yes, I think the relationship between CHP and the city and the commission has really greatly improved, and I think the management of the site has improved too. I do think Rocky's concern about the automatic renewal is well founded. I think it's really important, and I've discussed before, to have reports, regular reports from committees, and they would be one too, to have regular reports. I think it might be good to have that report right around the renewal time and just let the commission know, okay, this is the automatic renewal, just kind of a heads up so that we don't lose track and we stay tuned in to what is going on there.
I will say, though, they have been doing quarterly reports, and that's been consistent as far as I could tell from Scott, and I know just being on the board that they're doing that. So I think those are going to continue, obviously, and as the original agreement requires. I think my main concern is okay, well, I know that there's a place on the board, but for the next 2 years when I'm there, but when I'm gone and there's a new commission, how does that, all those things going to happen, and they may not if we're not
20 years from now
thinking about it. So I mean, it could be maybe we say, and that's up to what the whole commission wants, but maybe, every 3 years or every 4 years or every 2 years or I don't know. And maybe every 1 year. Maybe we're okay with it renewing every year. I don't know.
I feel comfortable with it as long as there's reports and a representative from the commission on the board. So the communication is important.
Well, maybe that's it. I mean, maybe that'll, if at some point the quarterly reports don't happen, or there's some other issue within the agreement that staff, sees, then that could be changed. But we have that authority to do it anyway.
What you could do is you could go ahead and approve this extension, and in the motion you could request that in 2 years' time that get reviewed. It'll be within your period of time, and that would bring really attention to the new commission. I think a review in 2 years from now would probably be not a bad idea, and I think you can extend this and then put forward a amendment to it that the agreement be reviewed in 2 years.
Well, that'll be up to the commission who's there at the time. But
well, no, but we can put this. We can.
I think the reporting that Commissioner Pauly mentioned on the reporting that's in this, it does that for you on a quarterly basis. But if you would like a special note in 2 years, we can do that too.
Or I could just remember in 2 years to ask.
Just
right before you're free.
As a clarification to the commissioners, I believe, are you all receiving the quarterly reports on email? I see you copied on there, and hopefully you're getting those.
Yeah, I am.
So we've made an effort to make sure that you're receiving that information on and they CHP has done a good job of meeting that requirement.
Okay.
And in discussion of this, they've indicated they will continue to do those on the timely basis that they've been doing. And
Okay, I think based on staff's recommendation and the discussion, I'm just going to approve. You already did, or what? Oh, you're speaking.
No, I
Sorry.
haven't talked. I haven't been called
Okay.
on.
Well, that's right. I'll call on you, but you're not authorized to approve anything, but you can put forward a motion. Anyway, go ahead, Commissioner Mom.
Should I wait till?
Commissioner Mom.
I think it's a valid point that Commissioner Smith brought up, but I do believe that it does need to come back every couple of years. I hate to see anything go past 3, because I know that staff gets busy, commission gets busy, there's so much going on in this city, things can get dropped through the cracks, and that did put us in this situation.
Yeah, we look at, it came up in December and we're looking at it in July.
Yeah, I mean, it's no fault of yours.
Yeah,
I don't want you to, you're just very busy, and there's just not enough hands to go around at times. So I think that any agreement should be brought back at least every 3 years.
Would you like to make a motion?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the original agreement, looking at Section 1, term of license, it says that the parties may negotiate an additional term prior to the end.
Yeah.
Right. You still have the whip hand, though.
Right.
It's a license to use a charter park facility, which you own and can only be operated as a license. All right? There's no ownership interest here.
So do they reapply for a license then every year?
Well,
I mean, you know what I'm saying.
you can waive the informality and say, as is now before you, that we're going to continue it till the end of the year.
Yeah.
You can have another term if you want to. It just says you can negotiate.
I think
But I
what the
do
city
wanna-
attorney is saying here is that you basically right now have complete
Control.
Yeah.
complete discretion, and you're not going to be able to get more complete discretion by giving yourself a term that is less than complete discretion.
Well, the only
That's-
difference is 4 years from now, when another commission's
Yeah.
here, that they have
True.
no idea what the original agreement was, which is
Right.
very, very
And
much
that-
the possibility.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only
that's-
thing I'm really worried about. Other
Yeah.
than that, I have no real concerns about it.
That's a reminder to us.
It's the turnover, really. I
And
think.
they'll be on
Hearing
the.
item.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
that'd be-
want to be very clear, I just really feel very confident in CHP. This is nothing against them. I just think that
Yeah, I
we
do
should be
too.
looking at these kind of agreements, because things do fall through the cracks, and we don't remember, and we do forget. And so I've always encouraged us to look at these types of things every couple of years. I mean, it's not yearly. I mean, because it takes you at least 2 years to really accomplish anything. I mean, really. I mean, it does. It takes a long time to move government and to get money, and especially if you're a nonprofit. So I just think that it's important that commission looks at this again in 3 years, or not. And so
Commissioner Mum, it'll also be when you have a board member off of your commission assigned on there to succeed
The mayor
the
would.
current.
True.
There will be foundation documents in a notebook that we will have for training, and that document will be front and center. I'm not trying to discourage you from doing anything here. I just want you to know there's many, many safeguards along the way.
no, I get that. I get that. I
Yeah.
understand that.
Right.
But we as commissioners have had seats on other committees that the commissioner has not filled the seat, and the committee's gone crazy.
That's true too.
And
True.
things happened. So I think that we need to be looking at 10, 15, 20 years when nobody in this room will be in these chairs except for maybe one young child.
I'm planning to live to be 120 years old.
Well, there you go.
Are you still going to be sitting there?
There you go.
I'm going to go back to my original idea, which is when it comes time for it to automatically renew in December, just put it on the burden of CHP to come and deliver the report and say, we're approaching our automatic renewal. I want to give an update. And that would give everybody the heads up and the opportunity to kind of reassess and tune into it.
You could set it for the first meeting in December.
Sure.
Just put it on the agenda.
And that would keep everybody aware,
And
which
I-
is important.
And I believe that CHP would be, not only would they be willing, but they probably
Do it
like
that
to
way.
do that.
Oh, they would be
I know that they
happy
want
to
to come
do
and,
it. Yeah.
you know, talk about the ongoing stuff that they're doing, and so I think that's an excellent solution.
And I also think that's important too, to do it in this public setting.
Absolutely.
So the community can see. The newsletters are great, but I want the public to know too what's going there.
Oh, absolutely.
On one of
And
our
I know CHP will come and talk
Mm-hmm.
to us. I have no doubt about that. I'm just thinking about other things that the
Mhm.
city's gotten themselves into
Yeah. Good point.
with other sticky situations. And I'm trying to keep the city not going that way.
I think you can incorporate that into a motion too. Gail has come before us.
Okay,
at
someone
certain
please.
times.
It's been all over the map, so
Yeah,
go
so
for it,
go
Rocky.
Well, I was going to just approve it because I felt like I was fairly comfortable with the safeguards that were in place until I heard my fellow commissioners speak. So I guess I would encourage one of you to make a motion if you think that we should do something more specific. And maybe we don't need to make a motion for what Commissioner Pauly's a separate motion for that. I think maybe that could just be done through staff.
Sure.
I think we're already putting that on our tickler file.
Okay.
Oh, good.
I move to approve 14-425 extension of the license agreement with Clackamas Heritage Partners.
Commissioner
I would
Commissioner
second.
Smith
I
has
guess I'll have
moved
the-
and Commissioner Mum has seconded. Vote, please. And it is unanimous. Very good.
Thank you.
Motion on the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Consent agenda.
Moved by Commissioner Mum, seconded by Commissioner Pauly. And vote, please.
Oh, but now that we've approved that, Kathy, did you get your answer to your question? That
Do you want to do that now, or?
Sure, go ahead.
I just read through, and you've answered all my questions. Thank you.
No problem, thank you.
And I noticed that the literature was appropriately had Japanese writing in the background.
It's actually German made, but
Well, no, the street sign, and one of them, the street picture is in Japan somewhere.
Okay.
So the going to the city manager's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I have tonight is to update you a little bit on the next steps now that we have the land use application filed on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project site. So we will be working diligently with our other partners and the property owner to obtain the easement that we need. Obviously, there's lots of planning that goes into that, trying to figure out just how wide, where it needs to go. Is it all right directly on the river, or is there room for a dog leg here and there? Who maintains it? Who pays up front? Who pays later? How many staff it takes? Policing, all of those
Are
issues.
those the only questions you have?
Yeah, those are just a few of them.
Oh, my
So
gosh.
we have a long
Yes.
working list. I wouldn't expect commissioners to actually know that because staff have been working with the partners, and Tony primarily and his team have been working on that. He and I have looked at a couple of different draft IGAs. Of course, that will ultimately be part of an agreement that the commission would evaluate, and so we're just trying to make sure that the commitments everyone says they're going to make, they're comfortable making, they're sustainable, and they're really going to do it. And so we're working through that, and that IGA is kind of important to have as something that goes along on a parallel track with the actual easement. Because the landowner provides the easement, but then we have obligation to build certain things and to do certain things. And, you know, we've learned in this city, if no one else has learned this lesson as well as we have, I would be surprised that if they have, is that when you build something, you have to take care of it after you build it. And in Oregon City, we mean to have things last a long time. So we're trying to look way beyond any of our time here about what that relationship would look like and what those commitments are and how we're going to pay for them. Because we don't mind taking on some of these obligations. We think the city, for example, should probably be an owner on the easement. Maybe we co-own it with Metro. But more than just building it, I'm very concerned about how we take care of it after we build it.
Well, and I have to say, I
so-
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because this city hasn't always done that.
Right.
So I
we
do
do
appreciate
have
that.
some recent memories of some of those things, and
Yeah.
we just want to make sure we're not doing that
Yeah.
here. So it's going to take a little time, but we do feel this owner has been extremely cooperative,
Good.
more so than just about any I've seen in my career. So we're hoping that continues, and the partners have to sort out what they're going to bring to the table, and
Right.
what does regional mean, and what is an in-kind donation for something you would have done anyway, really a donation? Those are just some of the questions. We're
Some of the
working.
hundreds of pages.
Yeah, and that applies actually to some extent to all of us, all three partners, and as well as the state. We're engaging them too as what role do state parks have? Is it design? Do they they have some experience, quite a bit of experience in these kind of venues. So we're trying to pick them too and make sure that they collaborate with us. So that's all I have. Kind of a short report tonight, but.
Thank you. It's my turn. We've had a couple of events that I'm going to let the other commissioners speak to first. One was ones that we thought we could all go to, and then too many people decided they wanted to go to, so they had to cut it back. But this was the Rovelink connections on bus service that Forest Grove is providing to link it into its connections to TriMet and on in through the system on through Cornelius and onward through the rest of Washington County. And I'll let 5 people from the city went, and I'll let the other commissioners talk about that. Another was a tour of Newell Creek Canyon, which 3 of us went on, and I'll let the other commissioners talk about that. Got several items though that I do want to bring up. I was not, as you know, able to stay for the study session on Tuesday. I did look at the tape, and I thought there was a very good discussion among the commissioners. A couple things came up that I wanted to speak to. One was I thought I heard expressed perhaps Father's Heart should be providing a permanent nighttime shelter. Father's Heart doesn't have the resources to do it. If there are going to be nighttime shelters, it's going to have to involve a much larger community, perhaps ourselves, but also perhaps the faith-based communities and so forth to do that. Mm-hmm. The thing I wanted to mention, I got a couple things I researched out, but the thing I wanted to mention is we had homeless people here before Father's Heart. Part of it because we're the county seat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Father's Heart came, and there's no question we had more homeless people here. You build a shelter, I don't think there's any questions you're going to have more homeless people.
Have more.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, those services are needed.
Yeah.
They're in demand, and when we do these kinds of things, we've got to recognize what the ultimate implication will be.
Absolutely.
The chief provided us some very interesting information, I thought, on the percentage of people that were, had mental challenges. I guess I'd phrase it that way. Those that were on drugs as well. I pulled up, and I've sent to you. You would not have had a chance to look at it, but the Department of Housing and Urban Development had submitted a 2013 report to Congress, and there were a couple of areas in which they talked about individual states in terms of what they were doing for homeless people. They talked about individual states if you were among the 5 that were doing the best in terms of providing shelter, or in terms of worst providing shelter. Mm-hmm. We didn't make the best category at all, but in 2 cases, Oregon made the worst categories. And one was for providing shelters for homeless veterans. The other was providing shelter for children and youth. In the case of homeless veterans, the percentage of homeless veterans that do not have shelters is 53% in Oregon. And in terms of offering shelters in Oregon for children and youth, and children are under 18 and 18 to 24 are what they categorize as youth, and these are shelters where these people are not homeless with an adult present. A lot of these are, of course, families that are homeless. That's 59% of those are not served by shelters. And although we ranked number 5 from the worst, or 4 worse than we were, we still only ranked in the 5 worst as a state. The Oregon City Rotary Club has been having some discussions on issues dealing with homelessness in the high school and charter schools of Oregon City. There are apparently 80 to 100 homeless students. Now, they may be living in cars or something. They don't have shelter.
Or they could be sleeping on somebody's couch.
That's part of it.
Exactly right. That's right.
It's not like they're living on the street.
No, that's
Some
right.
of them are,
But
but yeah,
and some of them
that's
are.
part of it.
You
So-
have to be clear on that.
Right, that's right. But still, they don't have a
You
home
could
that
be
they
an
can.
exchange student and be considered homeless.
I don't know if that's true. No, I don't think that's true. That's not what they're counting. That's not what they're counting. So don't be. This is a serious matter.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And so these are things that we have to consider as we're thinking about what we're going to do. Any solutions we come forward that are going to be helpful are probably going to also attract more homeless people. So those are a couple of comments I want to make on the study session that we had. We've been selected as one of the cities that are going to have a town hall meeting where we talk about issues that are important to all the cities in Oregon. There are various items that the League of Oregon City has put forward. League of Oregon Cities will have a staff person there working with us, and the intent of the town hall will be a round table discussion in which we have some of our representatives there talking about the issues that are important to the city. The issues they would like us to focus on are issues that they have listed as important ones, and we've actually we're each given a list of items to check off on which we felt were the most important ones. And the ones that Oregon City has listed, well, first of all, we all voted independently, but there were actually 4 of them that came out with at least 3 votes from us.
Yeah.
And these probably would be the ones that we would be looking forward to do. One was to provide tools for brownfield mitigation using $10 million in recapitalization of redevelopment funds, new incentives such as tax credits or regulatory modifications. Those are for brownfields. The other 2, which are, of course, very significant to us at this moment, are telecommunications pieces. One was to support the reintroduction of legislation that repeals ORS 221515. Now, that's what's given us the authority, as I understand it, to have our right-of-way ordinances that we have, and there's concern that might happen. The other one is opposed legislation preempting the ability of cities to manage and receive compensation for the use of their public right-of-ways. Maybe I should have more clarification on 21515.
Just one mistake there. That isn't what gives us the authority. What gives us home rule, the way it works is whatever statutes don't expressly prohibit the city from doing something, then the city, all the power that a city could have is reserved in the city.
Mm-hmm.
So if the legislature hasn't acted or the state constitution doesn't somehow preclude us from doing something, then if it falls under the health, safety, general welfare of the public, you as a city commission can act. That's your home rule authority.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's sometimes debates in the courts about what that really means and whether the statute does preclude something. So I think the concern that LOC has is that someone will introduce a bill to curtail that authority, and the bill could be to address it through a statute. That would be typically how it is. There would be a statute put on the floor and a vote. We're quite a ways from that, but I think it's important that the city is hosting it. We were asked to host that, and I can't remember if it was right before or right after. I believe it was before the county filed their lawsuit, and so there wasn't a whole lot of publicity about it, and we were contacted and asked if we would be a host city, and we agreed. They do have the cities in the state on a kind of a timekeeping schedule, so every 3 or 4 years they'll hit you up and ask you. And of course, right now it's very timely for us. Our new right-of-way coordinator, Lance Pallison, will be going to some of the other city meetings that some of us might not be able to make, but we're going to have one here for sure where we'll be talking about that as well as other issues that the commission has.
The fourth item that at least three of us voted to be included among the four of the many items that are here was pass a comprehensive transportation funding and policy package. So those are the four that we feel will be prominent in our town hall discussion. Another thing was we've got appointments. We've got applications are available for 2 vacancies. We've had 2 resignations from the Natural Resource Committee, so these are open. We'll be accepting applications for 2 vacancies. With that, I think you all have a copy of this registration form. If you want to attend the 89th conference of the LLC. Want to fill out one of these. They're very helpful. There's a mayor's LLC conference that is coming up in Pendleton. I really looked at the things that we'll be covering there and recognizing that I would only be here a limited amount of time, I didn't think it was worth the city's expenditure to send me to that conference. So I thought there was an item that was going to be on it, and I probably would have gone if that were the case, but that was not the case. So I guess I can start off from my left like I usually do, Commissioner Polly.
Okay. Well,
excuse me, before I did. Mr. Montalvo, was there something that came up during the commission meeting that you wanted to address? I thought there was something you commented on, said you could comment on.
Commissioner Roth had a question regarding a consent agenda item for a piece of equipment that we were purchasing.
That's right.
And I had forwarded her an email earlier this week, and she had.
Okay, that's all covered. And that's what you were talking about earlier. Okay, great. Commissioner Polly.
Okay. The 2 items I'll speak to, Rocky also went on, as well as you, so I will share my time with Rocky.
It was amazing, wasn't it?
Yes. There's his comment. Okay, you're done. No, just kidding. I'll start with transportation. Transportation's huge, so I was very excited to go on the tour of the Forest Grove Loop and see what they have done. And it was really taking transportation to the citizens in the neighborhoods. And they have a lift, so it was accessible. People could call in and get a pickup right at their home, curbside.
Nice.
And it was really it was amazing. The thing that was difficult about it is it was funded through grants, and so they have funding figured out for 2 years through the grants, and after that they're really working on a long-term funding plan. So it always comes down to funding.
Yeah.
But they did come up with a system that works well for them, and their ridership is far exceeding what they thought it would be. So that was encouraging just to see how they've been able to come up with their solution for transportation in their city and take it into their own hands with a little bit of help from TriMet, but it sounded like the city itself did a lot of the work. So that was a great tour. And then Newell Creek Canyon, that hike, it looks so big on the map, but when you really get in there, you realize because of the slides and the way the earth shifts that there really isn't, as much expanse for trails as one might think. And so Metro talked a lot about using a light touch with that area. And another thing that impressed me too was the lack of invasive species in there. So it's real fortunate that that area is kept, relatively pristine without a lot of the ivy and the invasive species that has crept into other areas. So that's all I have.
Well, first I wanted to relay a compliment that I got today from a citizen from Gresham. She had to drive over here sometime in the last month, and she was on her way to Champoeg, was familiar with Oregon City from before, and was dreading the intersection of 213 and Clackamas River Drive because they were bringing a big motorhome.
Yeah.
And she said she got there and was totally shocked, really, really pleased with what we'd done. And I just thought I'd let everybody know that, you know, we're still getting comments on the jug handle.
Nice.
And so that was very nice. I'd also like to talk about something, and I don't remember if I've talked about this here or not. I've been working with the City of Portland to put together an earthquake preparedness course for the general public and specifically for building owners and property managers. And so we've reserved the convention center. We have space for 3,000 people, and it'll be 15, 16, 17, and 18 of September. What this will allow people to do is be trained to be inspectors in the case of a disaster. And so rather than having to have a certified inspector come, we can go to the property managers of certain institutions, and if they've been trained in this, they can do their own inspection. They know their building better than anyone else. It's also open to homeowners. So anybody can go. I would suggest if you have buildings or you're just interested in doing it for your home, you do it quickly. It's on Eventbrite, and I can forward that information to you. But it's the main class, the ATC 20 inspection, is just one day. It's from 9 to 3 or something like that. But it's going to be a really good event, and it's filling up very, very quickly. So I can get that to you if you'd like. And the last thing I'd like to do is request a tour of the heritage site. And what I would like to see is underground.
Heron? Heron?
Yeah.
Okay.
Underground and up into the distillery building or whatever that thing's called. Distillery, what's it called?
The digesters?
Digester building, yeah. I want a distillery down there. No.
Yeah, I want to go with her.
Yeah. And I realize it would be a tough tour, but I would really like to request that we're able to do that. I think it would give me a better idea of what I can envision there.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of that because I was doing some work, but are you requesting a tour for yourself or the commission or
whoever would like?
How big would you like the tour?
Whatever, you decide, but I'd like me to be on it.
Okay.
One of those opportunities, and then we'll make sure that we send out an email when we find some available dates.
Okay.
And we'll just invite all of you and perhaps a guest.
Yeah, it's
And
probably a
we need
liability that we don't want to.
A fairly small group, just because the subterranean experience is different than the one on the street level.
Right.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting.
Okay, Commissioner Mum.
I too wanted to speak about the work session. I thought it was good discussion. I appreciate all the work that the police department did putting the stats together. It's an opening start. There's no way, like we said that evening, that we're going to resolve the issue with the homeless population. And I do, sympathize with the neighbors that, have that inconvenience. So it's a great starting point, but we did not resolve anything. But it was a great conversation.
Mr. Smith.
Let's see. I'll do this quick. Lots of meetings. Clackamas Heritage Partners meeting, which mainly just going over their quarterly report, which was sent to the city, and had a meeting with Scott and David and Tony. Clackamas Heritage Partners is very much interested in Willamette Falls Legacy Project. Even 5-10 years ago, we're doing some visioning for that site in just a general way, and so we're kind of wanting to bring a topic forward, which I think will come to the City Commission at some point as a discussion item. And so that meeting, I had a Heritage Coordinating Committee meeting, which is all the heritage groups. The last couple meetings have really been focused around all the heritage sites' participation in First City Festival, and all there'll be different booths around downtown, or different sites in the downtown during the First City Festival where you'll get to interact with someone from focusing on the pieces of history in downtown. So we've been working a lot on that. The First City Ambassadors, which Raul and Marge spoke of, which are also a part of that, is starting to have regular meetings. Went on the bus tour, which was great. I think Commissioner Pauly summarized that quite well. It was an amazing. They've done amazing work there, but there's a lot of questions about how it will continue, and I think it is so new that it's definitely not a topic that we're going to probably resolve very quickly in Oregon City, so we can kind of sit and watch what their solutions are to keep that program going, because I think it could very much be what Oregon City would want to see in the future, and partnering with TriMet on how we service the inner city and getting people out to Portland. The Newell Creek Canyon hike was great. It was really a treat for me. I haven't spent very much time at all down there. Have heard a lot about it. I was really surprised at. It was one of the hottest days we've had over the last week, which has been a lot. And so we were down there in a very cool. It was very nice, very cool, very shady, very. It's amazing how wet it is down there, even when it is so hot. We saw frogs and all kinds of things. Walked all the way down to the creek. But seeing some of the former campsites and things that the police department has talked about, and how Metro is kind of how active they have been in dealing with those. I was actually quite amazed for all the things that I've heard about in terms of camping in Newell Creek, how clean it is down there, how much work has been done to replant and clean out campsites. I can't even believe it. It's really incredible. But we did run into campers down there, and so it's definitely a topic that is on the radar for all of us. I just can't wait till. I think it's very exciting to see Metro moving forward with plans for trails in both Kanema and Newell Creek Canyon, because as much as I've had much more access to Kanema bluffs lately, and I've spent a lot of time out there and taking people out to the cemetery. And so I'm looking forward to being able to do that in Newell Creek. I think all of us know. It's just kind of advertising and letting people know how amazing these places are in our city that I think people just have no clue of.
Right.
And I can say that fairly. I think that's fairly accurate, because even when I do walking tours and take people down the stairs behind McLaughlin House or the promenade, people are like, "What? I didn't know this was here." And they've lived in or haven't ridden the elevator in their lifetime. So I think
probably live here.
They do. It is and so I think that's the more we can get people out to these sites, especially the mill site, the better it's going to be for us. And I think that's it. I will like to go on that tour. I think I've been on that tour, but I think I've been on that tour. But any opportunity to get back in that site that we can.
You were
that's
probably on
great.
that tour before the mill closed.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
It was a sanctioned tour. I'll say that. It was. I didn't climb over the fence or anything. It was.
A couple of things I want to come back to. I guess on the on that loop bus routes that they have there, they're actually buses. They're small buses, but they've got 2 seats on each side.
Nice.
Got an alley. They walkway there. They can handle up to 2 handicapped people that are on vehicles. They can permit up to 3 people standing.
I think 3,
so
yeah.
they're not. Somebody was saying something like in the Philippines they call them jeepneys. Jitneys I've heard them referred to and so forth. They're not that. They're buses. And so they hold quite a few people.
But they're smaller and they
Oh, they're a lot
in
smaller.
the
They're
community,
a lot smaller.
so
They-
that's
yeah.
good.
It's
They can
similar
get down
to
those
like
roads.
Pioneer Community
Yeah.
Center.
Yeah, so they can
But-
get down the roads. That's good.
We confirmed it at the end, looking at the map, but the actual creek we went down to was one of the tributaries. It was actually the Red Soils Creek, the one that passes by Safeway and so forth, which is the top, very challenged because of all the water that comes through there that was built out before we had retention ponds. But it is great. Many of those areas in Newell Creek do have problems with invasive species, but Metro and private people have been working on those, and it's amazing how rapidly the natives come back once those invasives are under control. I think it will kind of illustrate that there are a lot of homeless people down there, and that really speaks to having popular trails that are there because they don't like to be seen.
Right.
I want to make a comment on the Jug Handle project was very good. I wanted to just come back to the reason that we had it. It was a Transportation and Jobs Act with the recession that hit us, but those monies came to us rather than the Sunrise Corridor because of the expected landfill project that was going to go there. I think there was about $1 million of private investment by CenterCal that went into that Jug Handle project before the state committed to it. So that was the stimulus piece. And the landfill, the development of the landfill should still be one of our priorities.
Yeah.
With that, anything else for the good of the order?
Nancy's.
Did I forget
One
something?
quick comment. The League of Oregon Cities Conference in September has a workshop on cities' response to homelessness. And there's having a discussion about that. So I don't know much more than that, but just so that you're aware of that.
Yeah, and to get it on our calendar too, I forgot the date. When is the actual?
25th. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's the 25th.
Oh, it's our little
Okay.
thing we got up here. Yeah. Okay.
September 25th
Yes.
through the 27th.
And it's in Eugene.
Yes.
Well, I wasn't talking about that. I'm sorry. I was talking about our town hall. What date is that?
September 11th?
Oh, that is September 11th.
Yeah. Okay. So
City
we'll get that
Hall,
on our
yeah.
calendars. Okay. With that, no other business for the city. Meeting's closed.